And we are live. Hello. Welcome to another Warrior Creed live stream. With me, the radical Majid Nawaz. Today, we stream to you from Italy because the topic, very aptly so, is on your screens now, and that is AI must be disarmed, says the Pope. Something that is a long time coming. The graphic for of the Pope struggling with image. Let's bring that up now so you can see it too. Moral leader uh, on earth, and the rebuttal by some of those in text, such as Peter Thiel, the founder of Palantir, and their own approach to AI as well. The dangers raised by the Pope include his concerns around AI military targeting software, his concerns around the surveillance state and the use of AI for tyranny domestically, as well as his concerns around AI health data and transhumanism. All of those are separately addressed in the Pope's encyclical. It's something which we want to take by one and address with you here in this stream. Begin by attempting to share the screen. Let's see if this works. The connection that we're on today may not be as stable. It is on a Wi-Fi connection, so forgive us if that is the case. But the graphic you can see on your screens now is the graphic of the Pope smashing what appears to be an autonomous AI humanoid robot. That is a cartoon that appropriately summarizes the concerns that the Pope has raised in his encyclical. And to go now to the speech of the Pope in addressing this. You can see on your screens the Radical Dispatch, AI must be disarmed. The Clash report reports Pope Leo XIV says that artificial intelligence needs to be disarmed. The word is strong, I know, but deliberately chosen, he says. AI now demands to be disarmed, free from logics that turn it into an instrument of domination, exclusion, and death. Like nuclear energy, it must be at the service of all and the common good. Here is the speech of the Pope making that point. We'll just play it for you before coming back to your screens.
Artificial intelligence needs to be disarmed. The word is strong, I know, but the needs words capable of attracting attention, awakening consciences, and indicating humanity.
We apologize for the weak signal there. It is going to prove difficult to continue streaming with just the Wi-Fi here. So what we'll do, so as to spare you all the difficulty of a constant loss of connection, is stream as much of this as we can without attempting to provide too much media, because it does appear as if the videos, playing the videos for you, cause the signal to slow to a point where you're unable to receive the stream. But we are in Italy. The Pope has given the speech, an encyclical, it's known as, warning of the dangers of AI. And the stream today seeks to summarize the speech of the Pope and then back up what he says with reference to past radical dispatches where we have raised similar concerns ourselves. So don't go away. We're coming right back after the opening credits. This is the Warrior Creed live stream on the speech, the landmark speech given by Pope Leo. AI must be disarmed. And we're coming right back to you. Don't go away, just after the opening credits.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.
Damn, that shit was dope.
Welcome back to the... Well, we hope you're back. Welcome back to the Warrior Creed live stream. Again, apologies for the bad signal here. We're in Italy. The Pope has given a speech warning of the dangers of AI. Our regulars will know we've been warning for a long time here at Radical Media. Similarly, in terms of the dangers of technocracy. Now, Pope Leo, what he has said really is interesting, because he's raised primarily a structural complaint about AI. So what we're going to do is read for you rather than play media or display media on the screen. That does seem to interfere with the signal we have. And while we've got a stable signal, we'd rather continue and get through this stream as quickly as possible. So again, we're streaming to you from Italy. The Pope, of course, being at the Vatican in Rome. Now, the Times reports, dated the 25th of May, headlined Pope Leo, disarm AI to prevent it from dominating humanity. We'll read a quote to you from the Times of London on that topic. Paolo Benatti, a Franciscan friar and AI expert who has advised the Vatican, said, "The encyclical surprised me, not by what it says, but by how directly it says it. Papal documents usually speak in principles. This one names the structural problem. Computational power is concentrated in the hands of a few private actors who answer to no democratic process." That is a political statement, not just a moral one, and it is the right diagnosis. The Times continues, Leo signed off on Magnifica Humanitas, or Magnificent Humanity is the name of his document that he's published, the encyclical. Leo signed off on Magnifica Humanitas on May the 15th to mark the 135th anniversary of the issue of Rerum Novarum, the 1891 encyclical by his namesake, Pope Leo XIII, which called for improved workers' rights during the Industrial Revolution. Now, the Pope has, that's the end of the Times quote, the Pope, just to give you a flavor of what he said, Pope Leo XIV, he's compared the advancement of AI to nuclear weapons. He has raised a specific concern about, by analogy, about how AI is similar to the nuclear arms race. And that's because AI is increasingly being used by the military for war purposes. In particular, autonomous weapon systems that are guided by algorithm are making literal life and death decisions on the battlefield without the need for human oversight. Autonomous weapon systems driven by algorithm are, in other words, making decisions as to who to kill, who not to kill, how to kill them, who to spare, and all of that without human oversight. So the Pope has raised this as a major concern. The Vatican News reports in an article headlined Pope Leo's Magnifica Humanitas, AI must serve humanity, not concentrate power. To read a segment from the Vatican News on this topic, it says humanity, created by God in all its grandeur, is today facing a pivotal choice. Let's maybe risk it, see if we can bring up not video, but at least text on the screen without risking too much of our signal. If it does interfere, we'll stop sharing screens for you. But we do want you to sometimes be able to see at least what we're reading. It should, there we are, provide for a clearer context. This is the Vatican News on the topic. You can see it there, published 25th of May 2026. Pope Leo's Magnifica Humanitas, AI must serve humanity, not concentrate power. Humanity, created by God in all its grandeur, is today facing a pivotal choice, either to construct a new Tower of Babel or to build the city in which God and humanity dwell together. Divided into 5 chapters, Magnifica Humanitas has an underlying premise. Technology is not a force antagonistic to humanity, nor is it inherently evil. However, technology is never neutral because it takes on the characteristics of those who devise, finance, regulate, and use it. Therefore, Pope Leo XIV appeals for people to build for the common good and to remain human, following a courageous mentality of shared responsibility and communion, so that the world will come to recognize the human heart as the place where God desires. Quite a moral, direct intervention against the dangers of encroaching AI. This is Pope Leo XIV, the American Pope, showing leadership from the papacy on the topic that really is perhaps one of the most significant developments in terms of innovation in human history, and that is no overstatement. AI, of course, has all the potential, if it remains unchecked, to govern every aspect of human life, and indeed come to dominate every aspect of human life. But it does behoove us at this point to briefly just understand what that means, because the impression can be given that if AI comes to dominate and govern every aspect of human life, that it is just life managed by a neutral algorithm. However, as Pope Leo XIV has raised in his encyclical in this intervention, an encyclical being a regular moral pamphlet published by the Pope of the day on usually on social or moral issues. As the Pope Leo XIV has raised in this encyclical, the problem he's accurately described is that AI is never neutral. Whoever gatekeeps the algorithm, whoever gets to decide how to tweak that algorithm, whoever programs the algorithm, and sets for it its priorities and its decision-making processes, its ability to determine which values it should computationally prioritize over other values, whoever gets to make those decisions is in effect the person or people running AI. So if AI, autonomous AI, ends up managing all aspects of human life from military to health to governance, then really what we're describing isn't AI managing all aspects of human life. We're describing its programmers managing all aspects of human life. And the problem here, of course, is self-evident. Whoever those programmers are will program into AI their biases. It is impossible for a human being not to allow for their own particular perspectives, prejudices, biases to affect whatever they do. And so the concern here, a concern that we believe is a perfectly valid and legitimate concern, is that whoever ends up governing and dominating AI will end up governing and dominating the planet. And there are, of course, a handful of companies, particularly around Silicon Valley, that already have a competitive advantage in this sphere. And most competitive and dominant out of all of those is Peter Thiel's Palantir. And so it's no surprise that Peter Thiel in particular has taken umbrage at the stance that Pope Leo XIV has taken. In fact, he was aware of this stance prior to it being announced. Peter Thiel even went to seek an audience with the Pope, and the two now appear to be at loggerheads as to their own interpretations around what the future should look like. But to give you a basic summary of this point here, Peter Thiel's Palantir as a company, using the UK as a case study, already has, due to Prime Minister Keir Starmer, already has contracts to manage the nation's, all of the nation's health data, unified on one platform, and that health data being interpreted as it is by Palantir's autonomous AI, making life and death decisions on the nation's health. Palantir also separately has a contract with the Metropolitan Police, using a combination of not just facial recognition, but predictive programming to determine crime and to set the police's priorities. This is something that they already have this deal with the Metropolitan Police. But in addition, if you add Palantir, contracts with the Ministry of Defense in the UK, like it has in the Department of Defense in the United States of America, you can see how a combination of health data, domestic crime surveillance, and foreign war mongering, being all under the auspices of one private company called Palantir in the UK and in the US, it's the same. It is a particularly worrying scenario. And so Palantir already as a company has come to dominate the ground or the arena in which the Pope is warning about. So it's natural that they are now in their position juxtaposed to the position that the Pope has taken. Now, we're going to go through some of those examples because we've got all the receipts for you. And God willing and Wi-Fi determined, if we can get through this without the signal dropping, we'll show you some of those concerns already being reported by the press. The UK being a perfect case study, more so than even the United States of America, because in the United States of America, with a federal system, it is still difficult for Palantir to dominate the entire USA. Some states take a different view. However, in the UK, because it is not a federal system, Palantir has been able, by getting contracts with central government, has been able to dominate the entire country in each of those three areas that the Pope raised, that we've raised here prior on Radical Media: military targeting, domestic crime and surveillance, and unified access to the nation's health data. Palantir, using the UK as a case study, has already got a head start on all of those incredibly dangerous areas. Remember, this is a private company headed by an individual called Peter Thiel, who founded it, and his CEO, Alex Karp, another individual. And so the UK case study is a good example to talk you through when it comes to the dangers that the Pope has raised. But keep in mind that the encyclical published by the Pope is available in full, the Magnificat Humanitas. It is available on the Holy See website. On your screens now should be an image of the Pope's document, the Magnificat Humanitas, the Holy See. There it is. We will publish this tomorrow in the Radical Dispatch, and you will be able to see, you'll be able to read the entire document. But of course, our dispatch will be a good and useful summary for you, and that will spare you, hopefully, of having to read the entire thing, which is rather long. But that it is, we will publish the original document for you tomorrow for everybody to read for themselves. But that is, a fair summary of what the Pope has said. Should we risk trying to play you the Pope's video one more time, because it is important to hear what he said. Just don't want to bear with us. We're going to play this if the signal drops again, because it's largely video that causes the problem, I think. If the signal drops again or the screen freezes, wait for us to come back. We are attempting to play it for you one more time, because the Pope's speech, which I don't know if you heard properly, is important before we proceed with this stream. So let's see if we can get that up one more time for you. But as I said, if the signal drops, just stay with us. We will be coming right back to you. We're not going away anywhere. This is the Pope's speech about launching his encyclical. Here we go. Let's back to the beginning.
Needs to be disarmed. Artificial intelligence needs to be disarmed. The word is strong, I know, but it needs words capable of attracting attention, awakening consciences, and indicating paths forward for humanity. The Church has long been working for nuclear disarmament. A very great technical power can affect people's lives, and so must be accompanied by adequate moral discernment and public control. Nuclear disarmament remains a service to peace and the dignity of the human family. In a similar sense, artificial intelligence now demands to be disarmed, freed from logics that turn it into an instrument of domination, exclusion, and death. Like nuclear energy, it must be at the service of all and of the common good.
Now, hopefully you heard that, and this time it came through clear and in full. You can hopefully you heard there that the Pope compared artificial intelligence with nuclear weapons, saying it needs to be disarmed, comparing it to the nuclear arms race that so plagued the planet during the Cold War, all the way up until the Cuban Missile Crisis. We are with AI in a similar moment where there is an AI race. Of course, that's no secret. In particular between China and the United States of America, to see who can become AI dominant the fastest. And that is causing many problems, because if, of course, in war, as it is the case, that the future of war will be drone warfare, autonomous weapon systems, and AI, as has been already tried and tested in the Gaza conflict, as well as in Iran, then of course it goes without saying that whoever dominates AI weapon systems ends up winning every single war. Those weapon systems will be able to make decisions faster than any human ever could. And so it is a potentially Armageddon-like scenario. The Pope is perfectly valid and legitimate in raising this. But that is a video, it's important to hear that. The Pope correctly compares AI weapon systems with the nuclear arms race. Now, we mentioned Peter Thiel as a prime example of this concern. Well, the Pope and Peter Thiel have literally opposite perspectives on this. With almost, it's a classic example of inversion. Peter Thiel takes as is reported, takes the exact opposite view of the Pope. Exact opposite view. Peter Thiel's view is that it is the Pope who is the danger. It is the church, that is the Catholic Church, that is the danger, and that they are potentially becoming themselves the Antichrist. And his logic, it's interesting. We'll show you the logic on your screens. So it's no surprise, it's no coincidence that the Pope quoted from Lord of the Rings in this encyclical. Because, of course, Peter Thiel's Palantir, the name Palantir itself, is from Lord of the Rings. Now, both sides in this argument are appealing to meta themes. Of course, Lord of the Rings is by J.R.R. Tolkien, is a very pressing example here. Because for those of you who haven't read the books, a one-line summary, the plot revolves around a evil overlord seeking to gather these rings of power. And once you have enough rings of power and the one ring to bind them all, in other words, a centralization of power, which is the plot in Lord of the Rings. And once you get that one ring to bind them all, in other words, you are the one that is able to centralize all power and dominate all power, then that's the end. And so the purpose of the Lord of the Rings is that the heroes, in particular, Gandalf the wizard and his hobbits, their purpose is to make sure that nobody has enough power to wield that one ring to rule them all. In fact, they seek to destroy the ring entirely rather than allow any one person to have that much or to accrue that much power. So the plot in Lord of the Rings is particularly relevant. It may be why Peter Thiel, perhaps trolling those who are concerned about his company, decided to call it Palantir, because the Palantiri in the story Lord of the Rings are the all-seeing stones, which is pretty much the surveillance state, right? And so the Pope, recognizing that, also referenced Lord of the Rings in his encyclical and his speech to launch it. We're going to just quickly quote you that before we go to Peter Thiel's rebuttal to some of this. But here on your screens now, as reported by AF Post, it should be there on your screens. It says, quoting a paragraph from the Pope's encyclical speech. In his first encyclical cautioning against the dangers of AI and technology, Pope Leo XIV quotes J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. And here is the quote. It is not our part to master all the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the succor of those years wherein we are set, uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after may have clean earth to till. Now, the key point there is that first line is not our part to master all the tides of the world. Of course, alternative view would be that it is our part to try and master all the tides of this world. And underneath that, in the dispatch that we will be publishing after this stream, you can see what we've written there. Peter Thiel is the founder of AI data spyware firm Palantir. Yes, that is named after the Palantiri spy stones in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, where Saruman uses the Orthanc stone to commune with the evil Sauron, who had the Ithil stone. So it is a curious development that both sides of this debate, both very powerful men, Peter Thiel, one of the wealthiest billionaires on the planet, in history's most powerful military state, running a AI military targeting software company that has contracts with history's most powerful military state, and that is the United States military and the Department of Defense, is perhaps deliberately and knowingly calling his company Palantir after the evil side in Lord of the Rings, the all-seeing stones, a reference to the surveillance state. Perhaps Peter Thiel doesn't care that we think that he is a dangerous, and his company is a dangerous development. The Pope, seeing that, has decided to quote from Lord of the Rings as well. But both have, despite the trolling, and Peter Thiel perhaps doesn't believe he is evil. It would be, there's no evidence to indicate that he thinks he himself is evil. So it's safe to say he's trolling humanity by calling his company Palantir. But the interesting thing is that he has a unique approach to rebuttal here, which is rather disingenuous. We're going to come to why over the course of this stream. But he has the exact opposite argument to the Pope. And in fact, he presents the Pope and the Church as the potential evil and overreaching power, and even considers that that could be where the Antichrist comes from. So on your screens now, we're going to just show you some of that rebuttal before we go to the substance of the Pope's concerns. This would be Peter Thiel's perspective on what's been raised. You can see here by Christopher Hale, in leaked audio recordings, Peter Thiel revealed that he told J.D. Vance to ignore Pope Leo XIV on moral issues, including the development of ethical AI. He also suggested the American Pope was a tool of the Antichrist. That is on your screen. You can see that. It is a story first broken by that post there, Christopher Hale, who is a Catholic commentator on socials. And the International Business Times then reported on the 28th of April, 2026, a confirmation. Last year, you can see this now on your screens, audio recordings from a private lecture series in which Thiel discussed the Antichrist and appeared to cast Pope Leo XIV as a potential manifestation of that figure leaked online. Those recordings have resurfaced, gaining renewed scrutiny and highlighting a deepening rift between the accelerationist goals of parts of the tech elite and the cautious humanism promoted by the papacy. Christopher Hale, again here on his second post, Peter Thiel calls Pope Leo XIV the woke American Pope. He's worried about Pope Leo working with a, quote, woke American president like AOC, Alexandria Cortez, to create a Marxist Caesar papist fusion. Again here, the Observer on your screens, tech billionaire Thiel claims regulators are the Antichrist. Thiel, a committed Christian, yes, Thiel, a committed Christian, claimed that modern society faces two dangers, Armageddon on one side and authoritarian control, what he calls the Antichrist, on the other. In the 21st century, the Antichrist is a Luddite who wants to stop all science. he said in his opening talk of the 15th of September. This vision of the Antichrist is embodied by technology regulators and the governing bodies that oversee them. According to journalist Ryan Mack, who has covered Thiel for over a decade, the billionaire's recent rhetoric is not new, but repackaged. The Antichrist is a scandalous new metaphor for old ideas. Since the early 2000s, Thiel has been warning that Western civilization is in decline, that progress is being strangled by bureaucracy, and that innovation must be liberated from state control. Now, it's worth pausing here because what you just heard is it's a legitimate concern presented for illegitimate reasons. Let's unpack that, right? What we mean. So Peter Thiel raises very legitimate concerns that resonate with all of us about the oversized state, an over-regulated state, perhaps in the European context, certainly a state that has gone too far to the left, too large, has become burdened by welfare and has become anti-innovation, has become heavy on tax, has become a hostile climate for innovation and business and for young startups. So these are all incredibly legitimate concerns. The decline and the stagnation in terms of governance and business across Europe, but also generally in the world, is something that is self-evident. People are feeling it. People are in agreement that perhaps the state has become too regulated, too slow, and too quick to interfere in our lives. So that is the legitimate concern raised by Peter Thiel in his defense against the Pope's critique of all dominant AI. But the legitimate concern we've just summarized is raised for illegitimate reasons. What do we mean by that? Because go back to the Lord of the Rings analogy that the Pope raised in his speech. If you're truly concerned about the size of the state, the solution isn't to destroy the state and bring all power that the state once held into the hands of private individuals or private corporations headed by private individuals, because that is the equivalent of the One Ring to rule them all in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings trilogy. Instead, the solution, if you are truly concerned about too much power being concentrated anywhere, the solution would be to decentralize. Now, today, with technology as it is possible to decentralize. It is possible to unconcentrate power from the middle and to distribute it across the nation on a lateral scale. Now, what we would argue is that partly why Brexit happened in the United Kingdom was an attempt to decentralize power from Brussels and return power to the nation state. But within the nation state context, you don't stop there. You continue to decentralize power. And that's why, again, back to the UK as a case study, once the UK broke from Brexit, from the European Union, which is a centralized continental level governance structure, once the UK broke from that, within the UK, you also have further decentralization of power. So you have a Welsh Senate, you have a Scottish Parliament, you have a Northern Ireland Assembly, and you have Westminster for Great Britain as a parliament in London. So you have these parliaments in each of the regions, but you can continue to decentralize power, but within the context of a nation state. So one could argue that the direction of travel for AI needs to be in a similar way, whereby no one corporation, private company, individual has absolute control over AI. So that would be, we would argue, the legitimate reason for holding the legitimate concern that Peter Thiel raises, that the state has become bloated, too big, too slow, and too in everybody's business. We agree with that. The solution to saying the state has become too big should never be, then give me all the power as Palantir and I'll run it for you. That is, what we say, cutting off our nose to spite our face. That isn't the solution. So Peter Thiel, clearly thinking that everybody is stupid, thinks that that's the line we're going to fall for. Now, to summarize, therefore, his rebuttal to the Pope, his argument would be that the Pope calling for regulation is a merger or a re-interference of church and state. The church has no right to interfere in matters of state and governance. And if it does, it's a return to the church and state theocratic setup. And in his view, that's the Antichrist. It is the church, again, telling governance structures how to behave, and that is dangerous, and therefore they are the Antichrist. But Pope Leo hasn't suggested that in his encyclical. This is Peter Thiel's attempt to rebut those raising the concerns of AI. Now, it's easy for some people to fall for that rebuttal because in the climate we currently are in, where, again, using the case study of the UK, there is a legitimate anti-state sentiment. The recent local election results reflect that in the rise of Reform UK, a populist centre-right party that is sceptical of the size of the bloated welfare state in the UK. So riding that sentiment, there are some who fall for the argument put forward by the likes of Peter Thiel and his PayPal mafia friend Elon Musk, that the state has become too bloated and that therefore the state needs to be absolutely destroyed. Except, as we say, what they want to do is then step into that void as Palantir, as a private company, and continue to govern in all aspects that the state used to govern us in. And in the UK, one particularly loud proponent of this model is Boris Johnson's former chief of staff, Dominic Cummings, who, after leaving office under Boris Johnson, launched which is well known, it's in the press, launched a huge campaign against the size of the state, against the bureaucracy, against the civil servants. But what he doesn't tell you is that he's also beholden, he's also bedazzled, in fact, by the technocratic ideology of the likes of Peter Thiel, Palantir, and Elon Musk, and in fact, even Bill Gates. Of course, all of the COVID mandates were imposed under Dominic Cummings, who was chief of staff for Boris Johnson, and his major critique of Boris Johnson's government as chief of staff was that they didn't lock down fast enough or hard enough or long enough. So even though, and this is Dominic Cummings is a good example of this, even though you will find voices who have been critical of the overburdened, overlarge, lazy, heavy, slow-moving state bureaucracy, their solution is therefore give all power to private tech companies. But rather their solution should be decentralize power and don't allow it to concentrate in any one person's hand. That is, to follow through with the Lord of the Rings Tolkien analogy, the decentralization of power is the modern day equivalent of destroying the ring in Mount Doom, which is what the hobbits did, because no one entity should be allowed to control that much power. And that is what Palantir, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Dominic Cummings in the UK, Boris Johnson's former chief of staff, that is what they're not telling you. They are missing out that element in their rebuttal to concerns raised by people like Pope Leo XIV. And so it is somewhat disingenuous for Peter Thiel to raise the concern that it's the Pope who's the Antichrist because the state bureaucracy has become overly regulated and too large, and the church is only making it worse because, of course, they are ignoring the fact that the solution could indeed be decentralization instead of giving all power to Peter Thiel and Palantir. Now, the Times summarizes some of the concerns of the Pope. We're going to go into those for you now. So this is the Times from the 25th of May. It should be on your screens now, and we'll read it for you too. You can see there the Pope's concerns. This is from our Radical Dispatch, which will be published after this stream. So the Pope's concerns is the section heading, and then the subheading is AI and military targeting. The Times reports 25th of May 2026, and we'll just read it for you. The Pope has said that artificial intelligence must be disarmed to prevent it from accelerating wars, slashing jobs, and dominating humanity. The Pontiff set down his challenge to Silicon Valley in a manifesto or encyclical entitled Magnifica Humanitas, the Magnificent Humanity. He said big tech firms should not be left to formulate an overarching ethical code to govern the use of AI themselves. A more moral AI is not enough if that morality is determined by a few, he wrote. The Pope warned that the trend of AI companies winning military contracts to insert their algorithms into battlefield kill chains can only bring about conflict more quickly and render it more impersonal, lowering the threshold for resorting to violence, transforming defense into threat prediction, and thus reducing victims to data. You see that key line there, yeah? transforming defense into threat prediction and thus reducing victims to data. He continues, AI must be disarmed, he wrote, adding to disarm AI does not mean rejecting technology, but preventing it from dominating humanity. So these are the concerns the Pope has raised when it comes to military targeting, that there will be predictive autonomous weapon systems. Predictive, in other words, they will predict where the target is and then shoot to kill without any human involvement. There is no right of appeal. If a robot has decided you need to be dead, you will be dead. It is a rather dystopic vision of the future that Peter Thiel wants us to submit to. And the Pope is right to raise this concern, as we have raised it in multiple versions of the Radical Dispatch over the years, and our regulars will be aware of this. We're just putting one of them now on your screens to read to you some of the up what the Pope is worried about. So what you should see now on your screens, hopefully the connection holds up. Hold on, reconnecting. So we'll give it a couple of seconds for you guys to reconnect to us. And you see that Radical Media reports on the 2nd of April 2026, British Medical Association triggers government query into scrapping Palantir's NHS contract. Just reconnect for you. Yep, thankfully you're back. Right, we'll try that one more time. Again, apologies for the bad connection. We don't have an Ethernet connection. We're in Italy at the moment, streaming to you from where the Pope has given this encyclical. In fact, so it's you can see the lovely behind us is the backdrop, which is looking very Italian. Now, the going back to the screen sharing to bring up on your screen some of the receipts for what the Pope doesn't like that. We will read it for you. So Bloomberg, yeah, it doesn't like the screen sharing. We'll give that a minute for that to come back. It is not particularly friendly right now to adding extra burden onto the Wi-Fi. So we will hold off on that until the signal is slightly stronger. But in the meanwhile, we'll just continue demonstrating some of these concerns that the Pope raised around military targeting, because now this is in previous dispatches. We'll give you guys all a second to come back. Hopefully, you're, if this is back on. Yep, here we are. It's not being collaborative. Let's check if you can see us, because on our end, it's not showing that you can. Yeah, so you can hear us but not see us, unfortunately. But we'll carry on reading for you until at least the image comes back so that we can carry on with the stream. Bloomberg reports 12th of January 2024. We'll provide all of these receipts for you in tomorrow's stream, so don't worry. And also, hopefully, the video will come back shortly as well. But in the meanwhile, at least you can hear us, so we'll carry on reading. Bloomberg, Thiel's Palantir and Israel agree strategic partnership for battle tech. So we're just going to read from the Bloomberg article on the 12th of Jan 2024. Palantir Technologies, Inc., the data analysis firm that provides militaries with artificial intelligence models, has agreed to a strategic partnership with the Israeli Defense Ministry to supply technology to help the country's war effort. And then we have continued in the Radical Dispatch with the words, with Peter Thiel's heavy involvement in domestic US politics, and via contracting countries such as the UK, it remains to be seen whether the very same AI software at Palantir Technologies is being used to strategize in elections via Thiel's super PACs. The Times reports on the 30th of March 2026 as well. Hold on, let's see if we can get you the camera back on. This is not very good. Linked to Palantir is Project Maven, a US military AI program that analyzes surveillance data to identify potential targets. The company has also been accused of allowing its systems to be used to identify illegal immigrants to be targeted by ICE. And again, the Times reports on the 3rd of March 2026, this time because, of course, it relates to the Iran war. And in an article, how AI helps 20 US troops do the work of 2,000 in Iran war. And there's an image of Peter Thiel in the Times. We're not sure you can see that, though. Of course, the screen is still not showing anything on the cameras. Let's see if we can bring another camera on, see if that works. Okay, at least this one's working. All right, you're back. So the Times reports on 3rd of March 2026 how AI helps 20 US troops to do the work of 2,000 in the Iran war. During the US-led invasion of Iraq, a 2,000-strong American intelligence unit was asked to identify targets on the ground for Western troops. In Operation Epic Fury against Iran, 20 troops can carry out the same workload. They are using software developed by the CIA-backed technology company Palantir, which uses artificial intelligence to choose and dismiss targets more quickly than the human brain can think. That line is scary. This is from the Times of London. We'll read the line again for you. And pay particular attention to that. They are using software developed by the CIA-backed technology company Palantir. Without AI. So the surveillance state is another concern raised by the Pope. The way in which AI is used domestically, so not just in wars abroad. Now, again, regarding that, the Times is reporting on the 30th of March, 2026, regarding AI and Palantir being involved in surveillance in the United States of America via ICE, or Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We'll just read to you a quote from the Times on the 30th of March. Again, regarding Palantir, the contract has attracted controversy because of the company's work for the US and military intelligence services. One key system linked to Palantir is Project Program that analyzes surveillance data to identify potential targets. The company has also been accused of allowing its systems to be used to identify illegal immigrants to be targeted by ICE. Now, this is an issue that President Trump those raids. It was something that J.D. Vance was backing, of course, because his primary political patron is Peter Thiel. J.D. Vance now being vice president as he is. So President Trump split with Vance over those ICE raids after US ICU veterans nurse Alex Pretty was shot by ICE. But it isn't just in the US that Palantir is involved in domestic surveillance, but also in the UK, in particular with the Metropolitan Police, as we said. And again, we won't attempt to share the screen, but we will read from the Times newspaper, 22nd of May, headlined Sadiq Khan blocking £50 million deal with Palantir as he is accused of putting politics over safety. That's the Mayor of London is being accused by Palantir of putting politics over safety because he's attempting to block a £50 million deal that the Mayor with Palantir. What's the deal about? Well, the Times reports on the 22nd of May, 2026. We'll read it for you. Palantir, the data and artificial intelligence firm founded by Peter Thiel, the big intelligence gathering for criminal investigations. However, the Mayor of London, who has to approve Met contracts, police contracts, that are worth more than £500,000 or £500,000, has blocked it on the grounds that the force did not follow procurement rules and could not demonstrate that the tender process adequately ensured or demonstrated value for money. Palantir recently carried out work with the London Metropolitan Police to identify hundreds of officers across the force who had broken internal rules or were under investigation for criminal offences. So Palantir raised the concerns of transhumanism in the following way. It says Leo also took aim at efforts in Silicon Valley to use technology to augment human, physical, and mental performance, which he calls transhumanism and posthumanism. Anna Rowland, a Durham University theologian, said Peter Thiel, a co-founder of the AI firm Palantir, was a key proponent of pushing humanity to new levels. He doesn't broken basic barriers of human limitation by now. Rowlands, who joined the Pope at Monday's press conference said. She said the Pope's letter makes clear that trans and post-humanism do not sit in tradition. Any ideology that believes the human condition is something primarily to be overcome, or that implies we have the means to save ourselves through tech advancements, overcome our limits, or even achieve forms of immortality is incompatible with Christian belief that we are not our own creator nor savior. Now, this concern again is valid because as we've mentioned earlier, Palantir has a £330 million contract with the British NHS, the National Health Service, to unify all of our unified health data. And so again, it is a huge, huge concern. So the Pope's encyclical has raised these three areas: military targeting, domestic surveillance, and transhumanism due to our health data. All three Palantir is involved in the UK. It's why the UK provides such a great case study for what the Pope has been warning against. We also, in the UK, very curiously, the head of Palantir in the UK is none other than the son of Oswald Mosley, the founder of the original British Union of Fascists. It is a surreal development, but yes, Peter Thiel and Alex Karp have appointed as the head of Palantir in the UK the son of Britain's first fascist during World War II and that era. Oswald Mosley's son is the head of Palantir UK. He's all over the press defending Palantir and arguing in the way that Peter Thiel does, that Palantir is the solution. Power and private corporate power, that is precisely what fascism is. Fascism, the merger of economy with state, the merger of nationalism with private corporations, is what Palantir represents. It's what the head of Palantir UK's father represented. It's what Mussolini represented, the merger of economy and state, private enterprise and state. Unfortunately for them, they've appointed the son of the founder of the British Union of Fascists as the head of Palantir UK. So the Pope's intervention here with the UK as a case study is the best way to understand the dangers of what we're facing. But to respond, and we won't go on for too much longer because the signal problems are really making it difficult. I appreciate for all of you to follow this with us. But don't worry, because everything we've said and a lot more will be in the Radical Dispatch with all the receipts for you, linking you to everything that we're raising. I know it's an important topic. Unfortunately, we don't have the Ethernet connection where we are in Italy. And so we're relying on the Wi-Fi. So we won't carry on with the interruptions in the stream as they have been, but we will summarize for you and then provide all the receipts in the written dispatch. But the UK is the best case study to understand what the Pope's warning about. Those three areas again for you: military targeting using AI, autonomous weapon systems, deciding who to kill, when to kill, and how to kill them; domestic surveillance, whether in the US with ICE and in the UK with London's Metropolitan Police, using AI to determine pre-crime and to unify criminal records under the auspices of one private company; and then thirdly, health data. Now, Palantir was the company responsible for our abysmal COVID mandates in the UK. They were the company responsible for running the infamous COVID dashboard. And right now, under Prime Minister Keir Starmer, they are the company that has access to all of our health data in the Unified Federated Data Systems platform. It's a £330 million contract. All of this All of these reasons that we just mentioned is why Keir Starmer must be removed from office. Contributor to any individual candidate and their political race in American history when he contributed to J.D. Vance's election campaign. J.D. Vance became senator because of Peter Thiel's money. J.D. Vance then became vice president because of the deal that Palantir, Peter Thiel, and the CIA cut with President Trump. And so, as vice president, Peter Thiel's surrogate is in a position of great power. It is important to understand that they are positioning J.D. Vance as their next presidential candidate. He's their Manchurian candidate in the administration at the moment. And to raise awareness around this would be to do the following. It would be to understand that J.D. Vance is Peter Thiel and Palantir's poodle. He does not stand for anything other than what his backers have put him there to stand for. It is why Trump distanced himself from Vance after the US ICU nurse, veterans nurse, Alex Pretty, was shot and killed by ICE during those immigration raids, because Palantir was working with ICE to use AI to determine who to arrest and deport in those anti-immigration raids. And it got to a point where a woman was first killed, and then the ICU veterans nurse, Alex Pretty, was shot and killed while being restrained and disarmed by ICE. And of course, that led to Trump having to distance himself from the entire scene. Trump then dismissed the Secretary of State for Homeland Security and very publicly distanced himself from J.D. Vance. But J.D. Vance is Peter Thiel's guy. He is Palantir's guy. For anybody that takes the Pope's warning seriously, they must also take seriously the threat that is posed by the Manchurian candidate that Silicon Valley have placed in the Trump administration, and that is J.D. Vance. In the UK, that translates to Dominic Cummings, Boris Johnson's former chief of staff, who has a Substack and doesn't stop talking about the dangers of the state, though he was the chief of staff of the prime minister in the British state, who doesn't stop talking about the enlarged bureaucracy and the civil service, wanting to destroy the state as he does. Beware of the trap. The trap is that these technocrats present themselves as reformers when they are anything but. They are accelerationists. What is that phrase? What does it mean? Accelerationists are those who deliberately stoke the fires of revolution, in this case, the anti-establishment sentiment in the UK, anti-establishmentarianism. They are deliberately stoking the fires of British anti-establishmentarianism. They are riding the wave of the sentiment that platforms such as ours, Radical Media, have been addressing for a long time, and that is skepticism of state power. They are riding that wave and accelerating it so that the state is destroyed, but they are positioning themselves as accelerationists to step in at the last moment and fill the void that the state leaves, hoping to blindside those of us who are skeptical of the concentration of power or centralized power. They're hoping to blindside us by, at the last minute, usurping that power for themselves. So it's why those who are genuinely anti-establishment activists, who are concerned about the size of the state, need to be very careful of the accelerationists within their ranks. They will hide in plain sight. They will pretend they're on your side. But once the state's power is diminished, once the statists are, for example, in the British context, voted out of office, for example, once Labour goes, they will already be in positions of power within the alternative parties, such as Reform, such as Restore, being a case in point in the UK, backed by Elon Musk as it is. And they will seek to destroy the state by riding the wave of anti-establishment populist sentiment, but step in at the last moment. And their purpose will then be to monopolize all that power for themselves once the state has been forced to give it up. Those who are genuine small L classical liberals should be aware of that trap, because those genuine classical liberals who believe in a smaller state should be calling for a decentralization of power, not for replacing centralized power into the hands by taking it from the state and placing it into the hands of private corporations. It is not replacement of overlords that we are seeking, but rather the abolition of overlords altogether. And with that, because of course the stream continues to be interfered, we will end today speaking to you from Italy on the topic of the Pope's intervention in his encyclical calling for the dismantling of AI. Apologies again for the poor quality of the video. We hope the podcast is to the video. But the Radical Dispatch, the written form of this, will have everything and more that we've mentioned here in detail with all the links for you all to yourselves. So with that said, and until next time, where next week we'll be back